Welcome into the Printfest DFS podcast. This is week 7. We're going to be breaking down the Draftkings main slate. I'm your host, Justin Rue, alongside Scott Baney. And man, this is really going to be a wild slate. There's a lot of injury news we're going to be going over as we go through position by position. And I mean, between Aaron Jones and Michael Thomas being out and Emmanuel Sanders, there's just a lot. There's a lot out there. We'll be getting to everything. Scott, how's it going?
Pretty good, man. I mean, I'm definitely a lot more excited for this slate than I was last week. There's a lot more guys in play, in my opinion. It has been a crazy week so far with so much unknown with guys getting injured. Aaron Jones, and we just got the Hooper news yesterday.
Yeah.
Maybe signing with the Bucks doesn't really affect the slate. I mean, just so much news to go through this week. I'm really excited. I think there's a lot of different ways you can go. I think running back's pretty cut and dry. I think receiver might be a little more up to someone's opinion, but yeah, man, I'm excited.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna get right into it. If you want to start us off with your top quarterback play.
Sure. So I'll just jump in here with Joey Burrow, 5,500 on DraftKings. The fact of the matter is he's just cheap, right? And in a week where I think a lot of people are going to be spending on high-priced running backs, unless you want to go down to the Geo or Kenyon Drake, like we're going to talk about later. I think he's perfectly fine. It's not the best matchup in the world, but it's absolutely fine. The Bengals are currently throwing at the second highest rate in the league, so that's always set up well for Burrow. His yards per attempt isn't very good on the year. It's at 6.6, so we definitely want to see that improve. But 2 of the last 3 weeks, we have seen it jump to over 8. So if we can see that for a third week, that'd be really nice. He's also got some pretty massive touchdown regression coming his way, right?
Yep.
So he's second in the league in pass attempts, but I believe he only has like a 2.4% touchdown rate, which is just, I mean, that's unsustainably bad, right? For as much as he's throwing.
Yeah.
Combine that with no Joe Mixon this week, who they've really been relying on pretty heavily lately. I don't know how much faith they have in Gio. I wouldn't have much faith in him. So I would just project them to throw a tad bit more than they probably would anyway. Like I said, he's 5,500. I mean, I think he's just a little bit mispriced. He should probably be in the 6K range if I were to say. So yeah, point per dollar, I think he's a great play at quarterback. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he should be good leverage off of a lot of people playing Geo. We can probably expect to see Geo probably 25, maybe 30% in double ups. So I think he's really solid leverage. I think my favorite play at quarterback is going to be Kyler Murray. And there's a lot of reasons to love Kyler. This game environment against Seattle is pristine. Their implied totals are right around 26.5. It's fine. It's not great, but it's fine. I mean, the total, the over-under in that game, I believe, is like 56. So he's at home. He should be having to keep his foot on the gas the entire game with Russell Wilson slinging the ball every play against him. So it should be a nice back and forth contest. He's going to run. I mean, in the last 4 games, he's ran for 53 yards per game. And he's taken on the Seattle defense who allows 7.9 yards per attempt, 28 points per game to opposing quarterbacks. They're 29th DVOA. They're not getting a lot of pressure. 7,100. I think you just play Kyler in cash, and I think you just move on.
Yeah, I think quarterback's pretty cut and dry this week. I think you're either paying up for Kyler or you're paying down for Burrow. If you pay down for Burrow, it does make it easier to pay up a tight end. If you pay up for Kyler, you can pay down tight. I mean, tight ends should show anyway. We'll talk about that later. But I think it's also worth noting that Jamal Adams was ruled out again. I think that was to be expected, but it's at least noteworthy. Yeah, I mean, Kyler's just absolutely pounding on the ground this year. Whenever they're getting close to the goal line, it's Kyler.
Yeah.
They're just calling his number. Would like to see his passing efficiency go up a little bit. I mean, he was pretty abysmal last week versus Dallas, but we saw that was about as bad of a passing game as he could have had, right? And he still got there because he runs. I mean, he is just so safe. And in this matchup, the Sunday night hammer spot, he has 40-point upside if all things go well. So I absolutely love him. That's probably who I'll be rolling out in cash. So
Yeah.
yeah, I could not agree more.
I have one more note on Kyler here. So Seattle, they've allowed passes of 15 plus yards. They've allowed a 58% completion percentage on those passes. And Kyler so far this year has only completed 30% of his passes at 15 plus yards. So that might help his efficiency downfield. And if he can connect on a couple of these deep strikes to Christian Kirk or Isabella, I mean, this could just be fireworks. So.
I mean, so I'll give you my last quarterback play, and it's really more so just to pivot off of Kyler Murray for the price point, and that's Deshaun Watson at 6,800. So far this year, Green Bay has been pretty good against quarterbacks. They're only giving up 17.6 points per game. So not the best matchup, but I do really like the projected game script for Watson, right? So we talked about last week why we liked Watson so much. In these games where, they're down, that's where Watson makes his money, right? He seems to smash every single time he's put into a negative game script.
Yeah.
Now with Green Bay coming in, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have a chip on his shoulder. He's going to prove that last week was just a fluke, and Houston hasn't been able to really stop anyone. And I don't think there is any reason to believe that they're going to stop the Green Bay Packers this week. So again, I love Watson. The last 4 games, I believe, his yards per attempt has been 9.4 or higher. That is absolutely elite.
Yeah, he's been.
And I mean, since Bill O'Brien left, I mean, I think Watson's just kind of saying, "All right, screw you, dude. Let me show you what I've got."
Yeah. Well, he's been running the ball more too. The last couple of games, he's been averaging like 25 rushing yards per game in the last 2 since Bill O'Brien got fired. So maybe Bill O'Brien was just like, "No, I don't want you running. I don't want you getting hurt." And now he's just like, "I'm just gonna run." So, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely like Kyler better for the price point, but Watson, we know he has just as much upside.
Yeah.
Probably doesn't have as high of a floor, but I think he's a fine pivot off the Kyler chalk if that's where you want to go.
Yep. Yeah. So pretty easy. I think quarterback should be pretty straightforward. There'll be people paying up for Josh Allen. I mean, I don't think the Jets have anything that they can bring back from the other side there. People will definitely pay up for Aaron Rodgers, and that's fine too, but he doesn't really run too much. In cash games, you really want to stick to these quarterbacks who can run. So Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, and Deshaun Watson are our favorite plays of the week. So running back, I think, is pretty straightforward. Alvin Kamara is the best running back play. I think he's the lock of the week with Michael Thomas out, Emmanuel Sanders out. I mean, in the last 4 games, he's had a 27% target share. That's ridiculous for running backs. Honestly, I think we could almost project him for probably like 25% in this game, maybe with upside for more, which means we're probably going to be seeing maybe 16, 18 carries and probably 7 to 10 targets with upside for more if this game starts to go back and forth. I mean, the last 4 games, he's averaged 31 points per game. He's at home. They have a 29 implied total, 7-point favorites. He's averaged 20 touches in his last 4, 145 yards from scrimmage, and he gets the stuff on the goal line. He's getting 2.4 opportunities inside the 10 per game. And of course, he's taking on this Carolina defense who gives up 4.9 yards per carry, 33 points per game to opposing running backs, or 26 DVOA. I mean, it's the spot. I mean, you have to play Alvin Kamara. 7,900, just lock him in.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a stone cold lock. I mean, I can't foresee myself fading him for any reason whatsoever. It's interesting that DraftKings still has yet to price up these high dollar running backs. Even FanDuel's priced up Zeke, Kamara, Derrick Henry around FanDuel. But yeah, speaking of the Carolina defense, I think it's even a better spot for Kamara's receiving game because we talked about last week how Carolina is just setting up in zone and making sure they're not getting beat. So that kind of sets up well for what Drew Brees wants to do and what Kamara does well. I mean, just dump off short routes to Kamara, get him in space, and let him do his thing, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, it's just an absolute. Kamara's going to go nuclear. There's no doubt about it in my mind. So, I agree. He's the lock of the week. So my Kamara is my favorite play. My second favorite play on the slate is Aaron Jones, 7,200. Now, we did have some news that he did not practice on Friday. So that's definitely something to note. But I talked about last week how horrid Houston is against the run, right? They're 27th DVOA against the run. It's a fairly easy pivot to Jamal Williams at 4K if Aaron Jones does sit. I'm a little bit worried about this injury. I don't really, but I mean, the spot is just the spot of spots. I mean, Houston's getting trucked. They've given up 969 rushing yards so far this year.
Yeah.
That's 150 yards more than any other team. That is absolutely ridiculous. They've also given up the most rushing touchdowns to running backs. I'll repeat these game logs again. CEH went 25 for 138 and 1 against them in his first game. That's 5.5 yards per carry. The Ravens had 230 total rushing yards. They averaged something between 6 and 7 yards per carry. James Conner, the corpse of James Conner, went 18 for 109 and 1, 6.1 yards per carry. Dalvin Cook, 27 for 130 and 2, 4.8 yards per carry. And then we saw what King Henry did last week, absolute explosion. 22 for 212 and 2, 9.6 yards per carry. And now we get the most efficient running back in the NFL, and Aaron Jones coming in. It is just an absolute great spot. He hit a 66.1% snap rate, which I think was the second highest of the season last week. And with Devontae Adams back, we only saw 4 carries and 1 target for Jamal Williams. But Aaron Jones has still seen 4 or more targets in every game. So that gives him a nice floor as well this year that we hadn't seen years past. So I think you can project Aaron Jones for, maybe 18 carries and 4 targets. Yeah. And we always know the massive red zone equity he has. So all in all, he sets up for a great play, and it's an easy pivot down to Jamal Williams at 4K that opens up tight end for you. That I'll talk about in a little bit. So yeah, what are your thoughts on Aaron Jones?
Yeah, I love Aaron Jones. If he wasn't on the injury report, he would be probably a lock for me. My only trepidation is that he had that calf strain. He said that he felt something like on Thursday, and then he came in on Friday and had it looked at, and then they held him out of practice. So, Green Bay has notoriously held out their starters. With Devontae Adams a couple weeks ago, he said he wanted to play, and they just didn't let him play. So, I mean, I'll say this: if Aaron Jones is out, I think Jamal Williams is a much better play than Giovanni Bernard at 4K. The matchup is so much better. The game environment is so much better. The implied total, everything about Jamal Williams' spot would be so much better if Aaron Jones is out. If Aaron Jones does play, I mean, in my opinion, I think we have to ding him just a little bit, just because it's possible they could hold his snaps back a little bit with this injury, but the spot is the absolute best. If he's fully healthy, and we know he's fully healthy, then yeah, I mean, he's awesome. But the fact that he popped up on the injury report, I don't like playing guys that pop up late on the injury report after being healthy all week, and then something pops up on a Thursday or Friday. It kind of moves me away from Aaron Jones.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's probably more likely than not that he sits in this game. Usually, if a guy doesn't practice Friday, that's pretty indicative that he's
especially when it's late in the week like that. So I'm expecting Aaron Jones not to play. So
yeah, and I think everything I just said sets up the same for Jamal Williams. Obviously, not as a player, but at 4K,
it's 4K. He slides right into that role, playing probably 60, maybe even 70% of snaps. All they have is AJ Dillon behind him. Tyler Ervin is also out. So, that sets up. I mean, the only thing Jamal Williams wouldn't get is probably goal line because, AJ Dillon's much bigger, but he'll get all the receiving work. It's a fantastic matchup like you laid out before. So if Aaron Jones plays, he's a solid play. If he doesn't, Jamal Williams is right up there with Kamara as one of the top plays on the slate. So my next favorite play is going to be Kareem Hunt. I mean, Kareem Hunt has been a little bit underwhelming in the last couple of weeks without Nick Chubb. I think we all expected him to be a little bit better, but I mean, really in the last 2 weeks, look at who he's played. I mean, he took on Pittsburgh and Indy, who are both ranked second and fifth in yards per carry allowed. Now he takes on Cincinnati, who ranks 29th, and they give up 5.2 yards per carry. I mean, back in week 2 when Nick Chubb was there, I mean, Kareem Hunt had 12 touches for 101 yards and 2 touchdowns versus Cincinnati. So, I mean, Cincinnati, they allow explosive runs on 15% of plays. That's fifth most in the NFL. And in the last 2 games without Nick Chubb there, Kareem Hunt, he's had 61% of snaps, and that's even including the fourth quarter where he was held out. In I believe it was a game against I believe it was against Indy. He was not in the fourth quarter because he had like cramps or something like that. But he's still been averaging 19 touches a game, 12% target share, and 1.8 opportunities inside the 10 per game. It's fine. It's not great, but it's perfectly fine. He should be getting all the goal line work. They have a 27 implied total. It should be a faster paced game. I mean, it's a really good spot for Kareem Hunt at 6,800.
I mean, again, this is one of the most efficient runners in the NFL, right? We saw that in his limited workload when Nick Chubb was healthy. He already crushed Cincinnati once this year. Cincinnati seemingly gets crushed by everyone, right? And I think Baker's health is definitely a question mark. I don't think that he would have been playing if they had been playing anyone except for Pittsburgh, right? That's a huge division game. The game they really needed to win to stay in the hunt. So Baker's rib injury, I think, is probably worse than a lot of people are willing to admit in Cleveland. So, and we know Stefanski wants to emphasize the run game in general. So I think this might be a spot where we see even more Kareem Hunt. So I think it's a great spot, like you mentioned. He's too cheap, that as well. So yeah, I mean, those are my 3 favorite running backs in the week. The 3 we just mentioned, and then I actually think there's really only 4 in play, at least in my player pool, and the 4th is going to be Chris Carson at 6,400. Not as strong of a play as Hunt, Aaron Jones, and Kamara, but he is a little bit cheaper than Hunt, right? Again, it's the Sunday night hammer spot. We haven't had one of those in years.
Wow.
At least in the main slate.
Yeah.
So I really like the game script in the game. It's a projected shootout, and we have seen that Chris Carson is being a lot more used in the passing game than I think anyone really projected coming into the year. He's seen 3 or more receptions in every single game. That gives him a pretty nice floor, right? And he has the 4th highest percentage of red zone touches out of the backfield in the NFL. So that's also good as well in a game where we're expecting the Seahawks to put up a lot of points. Arizona is 21st against running backs, so it's not a bad matchup. It's fine. They're decent versus running back receptions out of the backfield, but they have allowed the 2nd most receiving touchdowns of running backs. And we have seen that Russ has already thrown 2 touchdowns, I believe, to Carson in the red zone this year. So, I mean, we know Russ likes to spread the ball out, but Carson seems to be a pretty ideal target for him, at least so far this year. He hasn't seen the attempts that we've wanted to see so far, but I kind of think that might just be fluky. In this game, that might be a little bit of a concern as well, because at least I would project Seattle to be up in the game, but it is going to be a shootout. So if Kyler gets out, gets a quick score, then I mean they're going to be throwing, right? And so that might limit the floor for Carson. So yeah, it's obviously not as good of a spot. A lot of things could go wrong here. I mean, if he ends up with 8 attempts again and 2 catches, that's probably not going to get there unless he gets into the box twice.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he's fine. He's a good pivot off that Kareem Hunt price point, and if it gives you a little bit of a sweat going into the Sunday night game, especially if you're playing Kyler as well. So that's always exciting.
Yeah, I mean they have a 29 implied total, almost 30, and they're 3.5 point favorites. So I can't really see him getting game scripted out because he's so involved in the past game with the 14% target share over his last four. And I mean he's still getting 17 touches a game. So I mean he's involved and he's 6,400. So I think he's a fine pivot in tournaments. He probably should. He won't be nearly as owned as Kareem Hunt. So he's a good pivot in tournaments off of Kareem Hunt's very high ownership. I think we should also mention Giovanni Bernard before we move on to wide receiver. So Joe Mixon's out, and so we've all done this historically. We've done it multiple times. So it's been 4 games in Giovanni Bernard's career where Joe Mixon's been out and Gio has started in his place. In those 4 games, Giovanni Bernard has been a top 20 scorer in all 4. He's averaged 88 yards from scrimmage per game with 17 touches in all of those games. So, I mean, it's not a great spot for him. I mean, since Cincinnati or Cleveland rather, they're 10th in yards per carry allowed, giving up 3.9 yards per carry. So it's not really great. I mean, Joe Mixon had 16 carries for 46 yards in week 2 against Cleveland. So I mean, Gio's not really going to give you much on the ground, and really the last time that he filled in for Joe Mixon was in 2018. So how much does Gio have left? I mean, he's like 29 years old. He's looked terrible. I mean, I think Gio is fine if you really need to save the salary. But like we mentioned before, if Aaron Jones is out, I mean, Jamal Williams is a much better play than Giovanni Bernard, at least in my book. Their implied total is 23.5. I mean, they're dogs. They're probably going to be throwing a lot, which might help Gio, but he's not going to give you much on the ground at all. And we're not even guaranteed for him to get goal line. He's not a huge running back. They have Travion Williams behind him. I think Gio's fine, but he's not. I don't think he's as strong a play as the field is going to give him. I mean, I think he's going to be, like we said, around 30% owned, which I think is a bit high.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to go there. I just, if it feels bad going in, I don't want to play a guy that I'm going to be concerned about, right?
Yeah.
There's a very easy way that he ends up with like 4 points, and I really don't want to go there. I mean, he's cheap, so I get it. He's fine. Jamal Williams is a far superior play if he gets the start.
It's just not a great spot for Gio, but if salary works out that way where he fits in perfectly as like the last guy in, then yeah, I'm not going to prioritize him though.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned earlier that I would expect Cincy to throw even more in this game without Mixon. They're already throwing at the second highest rate in the league, and without Mixon, I think you're going to project for at least the same amount of attempts that we're seeing week in, week out from Burrow, maybe even a little bit of an uptake. Yeah, I mean, who knows how much Gio even has left? He's bad. I mean, I'm pretty confident on that.
Awful.
I think he's just bad, and it could just be a full blown committee. Who's to say that Gio's just going to step into the mixing role too? So I mean, yeah, I mean it's fine if you need the salary relief. If we get Aaron Jones active, then yeah, I guess he is the best play down at that price point. But I don't really want to do that. I don't feel good about it at all.
Yeah. So we can move on to wide receiver. Who is your favorite wide receiver play? This one's gonna be exciting.
Oh yeah. So far and away, my favorite receiver play in the league is Terry McLaurin.
Yeah.
The Washington football team, 5,800. I said this last week. If the Dallas Cowboys have a game on a Sunday, you play the number 1 receiver against them, and they just seemingly always smash every single week. So just a little bit of data on Dallas. They're 27th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers at 44.1 fantasy points per game. So obviously that's very well. They've given up the second most touchdowns to wide receivers at 11. 6th most yards to receivers, 1,088, and their 21st DVOA against the pass and 28th total. Mm-hmm. So that sets up well for a guy who is just the alpha and more for their offense, right? It is all Terry McLaurin. I mean, this guy's numbers are ridiculous. He has a 27.5% target share this year, and he's top 10 in the league in air yards. That obviously is just elite. He has 45% of his team's air yards. That is absolutely ludicrous. 45% of the team's air yards. We talked about this last week when you were touting Terry McLaurin. I mean, there's no one else there. Steven Sims is on IR. Logan Thomas stinks. I mean, this other Sims guy caught a touchdown last week. I don't even know who that is. Isaiah Wright, whatever. I mean, it
I
is
say Wright's out too.
yeah, literally all Terry McLaurin. It's just hit. I mean, if he gets 15 targets in this game, no one's going to say, "Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah,
crazy." You know what I mean?
yeah,
I think it's more likely he gets 15 targets than he gets less than 8.
yeah. Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, it's the fastest paced game on the slate. Both these offenses like to play fast. Dallas might slow it down a little bit. They did slow it down a little with Andy Dalton, but if Washington can get out to a lead early, which I don't know, it could happen. Maybe if McLaurin can catch a deep one early, um, maybe this game can turn into a shootout. I'm not really expecting that. It's really just the price for the volume. I mean, he's getting 10.3 targets per game over his last four. He has the highest weighted opportunity rating, which is a combination of share of team air yards and target share. It's the 0.81 is the highest number on the slate, and he's 5,800. Yeah, I mean, he's only averaging 0.3 end zone targets per game, so he doesn't have much touchdown upside. I mean, yeah, they have a 23 implied total, but he's 5,800 against Dallas. It's just the volume he's going to get is just too high for his price.
I mean, like you said to me, he's fifth in the league in targets. He has a 10.4 ADOT. That's great. And this is my thing. I'm going to name off number one receivers, and I'm going to tell you how they crushed Dallas in the past. Robert Woods, 6 for 105. Calvin Ridley, 7 for 109 and 2. DK Metcalf, 4 for 110 and 1. And he should have had a lot more if he didn't drop that touchdown. Odell Beckham, 5 for 81 and 2. He was the windmill play a couple weeks ago, right? Darius Slayton, 8 for 129. And then D Hop, 2 for 73 last week. But I mean, Dallas is absolutely getting tormented by Arizona. They didn't even have to throw.
Yeah.
Power stunk. But I mean, everything's just massive blow up spot for Terry McLaurin. And at 5,800, I mean, this price is just straight up wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. It's disrespectful.
Just straight up wrong. I mean, this is just, if you're fading Terry McLaurin, send me head to head.
Yeah.
At CS Bandy on DraftKings. Just send me head to head.
Yeah. So I'm gonna bring up Keenan Allen. I mean, the volume he's getting is ridiculous. He's 6,200 against Jacksonville. They're at home, 28 implied total. He's averaging 19 points per game over his last four. He's averaging 11 targets, a 0.7 way opportunity, which is right up there. With Devontae Adams, they're up there with those kind of guys. He's averaging 2.4 yards per route run over his last four. It's really a solid number. He's getting one end zone target per game. That is awesome. I mean, and now he's taking on a Jacksonville defense who is the worst, 32nd DVOA. They allow a catch rate 69.4%. It's way above average, and they give up 8.6 yards per attempt. I mean, really, what it comes down to is just the overall volume. Do we think that Jacksonville can push back against this tough defense that the Chargers have to keep them throwing, to keep volume flowing to Keenan Allen? Because if they throw 35 times, he's going to smash at 6,200. If they throw 28 times, well, now we run into a target situation where he could be only targeted maybe 7 to 9 times, which would be not ideal with hitting value at 6.2K. So his efficiency is going to be awesome. Herbert's efficiency is going to be awesome. The Chargers are going to beat up on Jacksonville. I struggle. I mean, Jacksonville is only averaging 32 attempts against them per game. So and the Chargers like to lean run heavy. I mean, I believe I think they're like second in the NFL on early downs in the first half. Like they want to run the ball. So he'll be efficient. It just depends if Jacksonville can bring anything back on the other side.
Yeah, I was actually looking into Jacksonville yesterday. So the raw numbers for Gardner Minshew are pretty good. They suggest that he's good for fantasy. And if you just look at his game logs, you think, oh, this guy's pretty good. But Jacksonville is really struggling to put up points in games, right? I think they've scored less than 20 points in 4 straight. And it is a game where it's great for Keenan Allen. And he'll likely do damage one way or another, but it would definitely be good if Jacksonville could put up some kind of a fight in this game. But I mean, the one good thing that I would like to mention is that Keenan Allen Keenan Allen is moving around a lot this year. He's playing 45% of the snaps from the slot. C.J. Henderson is only playing 5% of his snaps in the slot, so he's gonna fade that for a lot of the game, right? So that sets up even better for him. I mean, all concerns that everyone had for Keenan Allen season long because of Tyrod have been mitigated by Herbert.
Yeah.
And I'm shocked at Herbert's success early on. I mean, I was not a Herbert guy coming into the draft. I thought he had a lot of mechanical issues, decision-making issues. But I mean, he's proven the haters wrong right now, man. He's just going out there and balling, and he's slinging the rock, and it has been great for everyone in that offense. So I mean, it's a great spot. It's a good price point, 6,200. I think he sets up well, regardless of the game script, just because of his target share. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I just struggle with it because if Gardner's not going to put up a fight and they're not going to put up points, I'm just afraid I could see the Chargers getting out to like a 3-score lead and just sitting on it.
Yep, for sure.
Moving on to another guy I really like this week is T. Higgins from Cincinnati, 5,300. In my opinion, he's just a straight up alpha. He's the X in this offense. AJ Green is just total dust. We did see a little bit of a resurgence from AJ Green last year, but I mean, I think that might just be flash in the pan more than anything else. T. Higgins is running he's out there on 83.1% of the snaps, so that's great to see. Over the last 4, he's averaged 8 targets a game. He's had 90 or more air yards in each of his last 4 as well, so that's also great to see. We saw a blow-up spot last week where he had 8 receptions. He's actually 17th in the league in air yards, which is actually behind A.J. Green. But A.J. Green, we've seen, just can't do anything.
He's volatile, yeah.
He's slow. He's busted. He can't jump. He's out there giving up on plays. He clearly wants to get traded badly.
Yeah.
And I think it might just be a nice rookie connection between Burrow and Higgins. Burrow obviously loves him and trusts him a lot. And again, it's not the best matchup on paper with Denzel Ward projected to be on him a good bit, but it's worth noting the Ward plays exclusively on the left side of the field. He does not move around. He does not shoot, right?
Yep.
And Higgins moves around a lot too. He plays 41% of his snaps on the left side, so he will be seeing him for, I mean, give or take half his routes, right? But it's likely that defenses just haven't caught on to this AJ Green thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, do teams think that AJ Green is not dust?
Yeah, it might be tilting coverage towards AJ Green. Yeah, I mean, T. Higgins is T. Higgins and Boyd, I think, are the two guys in this offense. It's AJ Green is not. I mean, yeah, he had 11 targets last week. His targets are going to fluctuate up and down in games that he actually cares and games that he doesn't care. So, do we think AJ Green cares? I don't know.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the decision between Higgins and Boyd is going to be a big one this week.
Yeah. Yeah. So Higgins and Boyd, actually, they've been both really consistent. Actually, they both have had at least a 20% target share in each of the last 4 games. So they're getting consistent volume. It's not like AJ Green where it's like, yeah, he has great volume this game, and then he has like 3 targets the next game. No, they're really consistent, and they're both getting right around 8 targets per game. They both have a 0.58 for Higgins and a 0.56 weight opportunity rating. Those are both solid numbers. T. Higgins averaging 84 yards per game over his last 4. Tyler Boyd's averaging 87 yards per game. I think the big difference here is T. Higgins has 5 end zone targets, so he has 0.8 end zone targets per game to 1 for Tyler Boyd. So Tyler Boyd averages 0.2 end zone targets per game, and T. Higgins averages 0.8. 0.8 is a really solid number of end zone targets per game. So I think that the touchdown upside lies with T. Higgins, and he's 100 cheaper. So, and I really do. I think T. Higgins has around the same floor as Tyler Boyd. I mean, we think that Tyler Boyd has a higher floor because he's a slot receiver. But really, in all actuality, they're getting about the same amount of targets per game. And T. Higgins has a 14 ADOT to 10 ADOT for Tyler Boyd. So I think there's a little more upside here in T. Higgins because he gets a little deeper targets and he gets end zone targets. So I'll probably be leaning Higgins, but yeah, it could really go either way.
I agree. I mean, either one's fun. I like Higgins for the upside, and they seemingly have a pretty similar floor as well. Um, but I mean, I'm not going to fight anyone who wants to play Boyd. He's absolutely fine.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to bring up Deontay Johnson. So he's 4,200, and immediately when you see that price, you're like, why is this guy 4,200? This is the guy that we expected to get up. I mean, I could see him getting up to like 6.5, even up to 7K at some point in this year. After his first two games, I mean, he had a 0.71 weight opportunity. He was getting 11 and a half targets per game. Um, I mean, he was the alpha in this offense. Juju Smith-Schuster is not a part of this offense at all. Uh, he's if you look at his numbers, I mean, his ADOT is ridiculous. Over the last four games, Juju's ADOT is 5.2. He's only getting 4.7 targets per game. Like he's literally like Cole Beasley. I am done with Juju until his usage changes. So he's not a threat. Chase Claypool is a threat. His ADOT is 13.4. I mean, he's just an absolute monster. And this matchup here with Tennessee is pristine. They're 24th DVOA. They go up with 69.5% catch rate, and they go up 47 points per game to opposing wide receiver cores, 7.6 yards per attempt. So the spot is really nice for Deontay. It's just what do we think this rotation is going to be with James Washington there? I mean, I think the risk is mitigated because he's 4,200. If he was 5.5K like where he has been, I think that Deontay is a tough play. But at 4,200, I mean, he's priced around guys like Traquan Smith, and it's like, dude, I mean, this guy's upside is ridiculous, and I think he has a pretty nice floor. Even if he has 70% of his role, say he rotates with Claypool and Washington on the outside, so he only plays like 70% of snaps. That's still fine. He's 4,200. It's not like you need a full-time player. And if he still has his full-time role and Claypool goes back to splitting with James Washington and Deontay plays every snap on the outside like he was in week 1 and week 2, the guy's probably going to get like 7 to 9 targets, and he's 4,200 and he's an elite talent. I mean, I think it's really tough. It's a tough situation. I think the risk is mitigated, like I said, at 4,200. I like Deontay this week.
I mean, it's just a blatant misprice. I think it's more likely that we see Washington and Claypool fighting for that number 3 spot. I mean, we know how much Big Ben loves Deontay, right? Just absolutely peppering him in targets so far this year when he's been healthy.
And health isn't a factor anymore. He's off the injury report. Yeah, he had a concussion. He has a slight increased chance of getting a concussion, but I mean, his back is no longer a problem. He's off the injury report. He has been. He's practiced fully since Wednesday. He's good to go.
Yeah, so I mean, he's a great player. Ben just absolutely peppers him with targets. What I will say is that if we play Deontay and he gets hurt in the first quarter, that's just going to be so tilting. And I know I mean, you can't really predict that. You know what I mean? I mean, he's healthy currently. Just throwing that out there, though. Yeah, I mean, I think he's absolutely rock solid at the price. I mean, 4,200. I mean, like you said, if he's running, 80, 75% of his role before the injury, that's fine. Before the injury, we were seeing, mid to upper fives price tag, and even then we were saying, oh, well, he needs to be higher for the volume that he's seeing. So I mean, any risk that anyone would be taking on with this play is just it's mitigated by that $4,200 price tag. I mean, that was one of the first things that stood out when I took a first look at the slate this week. I said, the hell is Deontay Johnson 4,200 for?
Yeah, it's weird. It's like that just seems wrong. So yeah, we'll see how that rotation plays out. But I'm perfectly fine taking the leap on Deontay. He's a talented player. He should not be 4,200 if he has his full role. Even if he doesn't have his full role, he's 4,200. So I also want to mention a couple these cheap guys. So John Brown's out, so that should thrust Gabe Davis into the starting lineup. In week 5 when John Brown's out, Gabe Davis played 100% of snaps against Tennessee. He had 9 targets and he went 5 for 58. He's 3,600. He's a fine punt. Demarcus Robinson last week with Sammy Watkins out. He ran 34 pass routes to Byron Pringle 17. Mecole Hardman only had 13 pass routes, and he also played 96% of snaps. So, and he's also 3,400 against Denver. he's a fine punt. Yeah, I mean, if you really need the salary or if you don't feel confident with Deontay, then those two guys are fine punts down there in the 3K range.
I mean, they're fine. Demarcus Robinson's not good at football, but I mean, he's getting the targets and he's cheap, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting that they're not playing McCole Hardman more with the draft capital he had and the skill set that he possesses. But I mean, the fact of the matter is Robinson's just out playing him and out targeting him on a week in, week out basis. So yeah, and then Gabe Davis, I mean, he was out there for 100% of the snaps. If he's out there for 80% of the snaps at that price tag, he's totally fine.
Yep. So move on to tight end. I think one of my favorite plays at tight end is Hunter Henry. I mean, over the last 4 games, or actually no, so he's had at least 7 targets in 4 out of 5 games. So he has a solid floor. He's been pretty consistent. He ranks 5th among tight ends in targets per game at 7. Jacksonville, they've allowed 5 tight end touchdowns and 10.6 yards per target, which is 31st in the league. I mean, they've been horrible. I like Hunter Henry this week. What do you think about Hunter Henry?
I mean, tight end's just a giant mess, as it seems to be every year. There's those top price guys: Kittle, Kelsey, Waller, Andrews, and after that, it's really just like a mesh of just guys, right? Now Hunter Henry, I think it's a misprice as well at 4,500, especially for the volume and the talent that we see that he has. Priced around guys like Eric Ebron, I mean, it seems like Hunter Henry should be around the 5K range. I don't know what's going on with the price there, but like you said, I mean, he's as consistent of a tight end as you're going to find in the league, right? Outside of those top 4 guys. Again, a lot of people were off Henry, including myself, going into draft season because of Tyrod. But Herbert has mitigated those concerns, right? Herbert's slinging the rock. So he's definitely my favorite point per hour play at the tight end position. And I really don't think it's close. I liked Austin Hooper as well, but we've seen he's been ruled out. I mean, it's just a wasteland. I mean, there's really not a lot to like. And I mean, Henry sticks out when you're looking at pricing. So I think he's probably the best tight end play unless you want to pay up.
Yeah, it really just comes down to the volume there. I mean, is Jacksonville going to fight back to force us the Chargers to keep throwing? But I mean, they have a 28 implied total. Implied total is so important with tight ends because it's such a touchdown-driven position. So Hunter Henry's he's great.
Yeah. So I'll tout Travis Kelce here. I mean, there's not much to say about Kelce. I mean, he's leading the league in red zone targets with 10. Denver ranks 16th in fantasy points allowed to tight ends. I mean, I don't really care. It's Travis Kelce. We see what he is as consistent as it comes in fantasy, much less at tight end.
Yeah.
He's seen a red zone target in every single game and multiple red zone targets in all but one game. That is ridiculous. I don't really think that's going to change. That's just the Chiefs' offense. They score the most points in the league. I mean, Mahomes and Kelce clearly have a great connection. Not a lot needs to play him. I mean, and I think the thing with Kelce is we can afford him this week, right? There's a lot of value that seems to be breaking through, whether it's Gio Bernard, Jamal Williams. If you want to pay down for Burrow at quarterback, Deontay Johnson's 4,200. We got Traquan, Demarcus Robinson, Gabe Davis. A lot of these guys you can pay down for, and I think it opens up really to do whatever you want. And so I think this week, more than past, I think it's a lot more ideal to pay up a tight end, right?
Yep.
And I mean, we always want to, but I mean, like we said, it's hard most weeks when pricing's a lot tighter and there's not as much value. We just like to punt tight end because there's so much variance in the position, and it's just a wasteland. But I do think you can get a little bit of a one-up on your opponents by paying up for a guy at tight end that you know is going to get their own volume alone and has just a massive red zone equity as well.
Yeah, 6,300 is just it seems a bit cheap. It seems a bit cheap for Kelce. Kelce, I think, should be right around like 7K every week. So yeah, yeah. I mean, Kelsey, they're on the road. It's probably gonna be snowing in that game, which doesn't really matter as long as it's not a lot of wind. Snow doesn't really affect anything. They have a 27.5 implied total. He's averaging 8 targets per game over his last 4. It's just really solid for a tight end, especially for a position where it's like, I mean, Kittle is going to be taking on New England, so I don't know if you really want to take on Kittle there. And then Hunter Henry, and then I mean Waller's there, but he's taking on Tampa Bay, and they don't even have an offensive line. So there's not a lot to like at tight end. If you really want to punt, which we love punting tight end, there are a couple guys down there. So Harrison Bryant with Austin Hooper out. Harrison Bryant is 2,500. He's a rookie. So last week he ran 8 routes. To Njoku ran 7, and that's obviously with Hooper healthy. So we can probably bump these guys up. There's a lot of target share to go around there. I mean, tight ends were getting about 32% of the targets in Cleveland. So without Hooper, there's a lot to go around. I don't know what this split's going to be. I mean, David Njoku is like, he seemed like a bust now. I mean, he was a first round pick out of Miami. He's 24 years old. He's 6'4", 246, and he ran 4.64. His best comparable player on Player Profiler is Travis Kelce, but I don't know if he's going to put it all together. I mean, he's shown flashes in the past. He is 3K, and the matchup is nice with Cincinnati, but it's tough to know what their split's going to be. It might just be 50-50 where each of them run like, 15 routes or so. I don't know. But if you're looking to punt, I think both of them, I think they're okay. I mean, at 2,500, really, what do you need with Harrison Bryant? And at 3K, is really not much more you need with Njoku. I think Njoku gives you a little more upside than Harrison Bryant. But I think they're both okay if you really need to punt.
Yeah, I would lean Njoku here for a couple of reasons. One, he is the veteran. Not that really matters, but it gives me just a little bit more confidence. Two, he is a much better athlete than Harrison Bryant. I mean, we've known David Njoku's an elite athlete for years now. He's had a lot of injury issues that have really prevented him from taking any kind of step whatsoever. Yeah, I mean, the 3K or 2,500. If you really get, I mean, when you're paying that price for a tight end, anything you get is fine, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can pay 5K for a guy. T.J. Hawkinson is over 5K, and he might have 2 catches for 15 yards. He's by no means any safer, I don't think, than a guy like David Njoku. I mean, tight end's a wasteland, dude. It's absolutely ridiculous. So if you want to pay down for Harrison Bryant or David Njoku, it's fine. If you're going to put the right pieces around them, and they give you 3 or 4 points, it's not going to kill you, right? We played Adam Troutman a couple weeks ago, and we printed 0.
Yeah, it doesn't even matter. Yeah.
If you play the right guys around these guys, it's fine.
Yep.
And I think that it's going to be Hunter Henry. That's going to be the chalky guy at tight end. There's really not much else to like at all.
Yep.
We liked Albert O heading into the week, but it does look like Fant's going to play. That would have been a sexy play, and then Price.
Right. Yeah.
Really, at tight end, there's really not anything else I would really punt for.
Yeah, to me, it's just Kelce, it's Hunter Henry, and then if you want to punt with one of these Cleveland tight ends, I mean, no offense out there, but I mean, KC is pretty decent against the pass. Yeah, Hawkinson out there against Atlanta. Atlanta's terrible against tight ends, but he's not really getting as much volume as we thought he would get. So there's not a lot to like at tight end. I think really just pay up for Kelce. If you don't have the salary, try to get to Hunter Henry. And if not, if you just can't get the salary, just punt it. Just punt it off with Njoku or Harrison Bryant. So getting into our windmill play, who is our favorite play of the week? I think that a player that you cannot fade and is going to absolutely smash in the Sunday Night Hammer. He's basically bulletproof. Like whatever game script this game is going to go, it's going to be Kyler Murray. If Arizona is winning by a lot, it's because of Kyler Murray. If they're losing, he's going to be throwing and running and scrambling and doing all the things that he does. he offers probably the highest floor on the slate with his rushing, and one of the highest ceilings because of his rushing. Yeah, I mean his passing efficiency hasn't been great, but like I mentioned earlier, Seattle is really struggling with the deep ball, and Kyler has also been struggling to complete deep ball attempts. So I think if he can connect on a couple of these deep balls, he's still going to run for about 50 yards. He'll probably get a rushing touchdown since he has 5 already this year. He has 1 per game. Uh, he is at home and they have a decent total. So I think Kyler Murray 7,100 is the windmill play. I think you get the Sunday night hammer if you're down in your contest and you have Kyler Murray yet to go. Don't be afraid because Kyler Murray will take you across the line to cash for sure.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I agree. He's an absolute windmill. It is a great spot in projected shootout. You know Russell's going to put up points on his side.
yeah.
Man, I just love these Sunday night hammer spots. I'm so glad we're finally getting one.
I know. Yeah.
I mean, just seeing yourself make money every time you see a Kyler Murray scramble for 12 yards. I mean, you just see your winnings. Just
If you go into the Sunday night game and you're already above the line of cash and you're just like, all right, this is a total windmill because you're already making money. And then every time he runs for like another 10, 15 yards, like, oh, well, I probably just want another head to head or whatever you're doing. So I think if you fade Kyler Murray, I think you want to just take me in head to heads. I am Justin Rue 23 on DraftKings, JUSTINRAU 23. It's also my Twitter handle. So hit us up on there as well.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning. I know that not so much of a windmill because of ownership, but Terry McLaurin is an absolute windmill. I'm going to take a stand and say that 5 for 100 is his floor this week.
Yeah, it's a really solid spot.
I think 5 for 100 is his floor, and I think there's upside for just a ridiculous game. So yeah, it's not a true windmill because of the ownership, but it's just the spot of spots, man. I just absolutely love it. So if you're fading Terry McLaurin and Kyler Murray, send us head to heads again at CS Bandy on.
All right, that's going to do it for the Printfest DFS podcast, week 7. We'll be back on Monday to review our lineups, whether we got our shit kicked in like last week or whether we printed. We will be back here Monday night reviewing our cash lineups. Until then, good luck, everybody.